Hello everybody, this is Raf's Cast, Tales from Mohawk Ad. My name is Rafael Ferreira. I'm professor at Advertising, Marketing, Communications Management at Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario. This podcast is designed to all the students who are in the creative field. Could be graphic design, could be advertising, and we try to bring former students and alumni to talk about their past at Mohawk and their career path, and advise to students who are just trying to get a career as juniors or interns. Today, with season 4, episode 2 again, we're getting Meg Button. She's a former Mohawk student, of course, class of 2006. And what I like about Meg is the fact that she's an entrepreneurship in the area. So she has her own shop, and it's amazing to see how progressive her shop is. She's a co-founder of Nuscreen Inc, also Shopify partner and expert, and have a amazing career until she opens her own studio and agency. So let's hear on Meg Button. We'll also have the pleasure to have Christina Pisano, third year creative student at Mohawk, with us in the podcast, also asking questions to Meg. This is the last podcast for this year. We're coming back in January. Probably we'll have 4 episodes into May. So happy holidays, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this chat with Meg and Christina, and we go from here. So with you guys, here we go. Welcome to Raf's Cast Season 4. We are here now for episode 2, and I have a pleasure today here to have Meg Button, and former student at Mohawk Advertising from 2006, I think it is, when you graduated.
Yeah, 2006 or 7.
Or
long
6 or
time.
7, okay, so it's being, I think, one of my first groups. I think you, at the time, you were you still had classes with Chris Whiteland, isn't it?
I
Chris?
did, yep. I
Yeah, so
did.
had you had classes with Jeff Petrossi?
I never had Jeff. I always heard about him from the interns that I talked to, but I didn't have the pleasure of having him as a teacher.
Okay, so all right, so yeah, so it's before Jeff was Chris, great professor too, who unfortunately it was not with us anymore, and then Jeff came in. Today I have the pleasure then to talk with the class of 2006 or 7, Meg Button, co-founder of Nuscreen Incorporated, Shopify partner and expert, and I could be here for more half an hour telling you all the talents and skills that Meg has. Art director, fashion specialist, entrepreneur, everything. I will start then, Meg, with this. Can you go back to that time when you have in the class? By the way, I was researching a little bit about your work a few of those days, and I found a Mr. Noodles commercial.
Oh no! Yep, I did that
for a college assignment. It's still in a YouTube vault, so
yeah,
that was funny. That was a funny experience. It's so simple times. Let's say that. Simple times.
It's a good way to put it.
Yes.
I was always a little bit extra with my assignments. Like, somebody would ask me to do a script, and I would come back with like a video and like some campaign, and like I always just was a little bit extra.
I also have with me today Christina Pisano, who's in 3rd year on creative side on our program. Just 3.5 months to graduate, to go up, and then already work at Momento Worldwide with her partner at the college, the other Christina. So there are 2 Christinas working together. So Christina.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I have I think I cannot have a best student here to talk with Meg today about her
Oh,
career.
Aw.
Okay,
oh my
so
goodness.
no problem. I will get into this at this time. What was in your mind, Meg, when you were at the college in third year and you are about a semester away to graduate it? How do you remember the college experience at Mohawk?
Um, it was a long time ago, but I do remember a lot of excitement around just, for me, it was about not just like finding a new job, but like I also was thinking about moving. So actually like changing my whole life around, thinking about going from this student to working out in the world, and then also just figuring out like what I actually wanted to do. So my headspace was very much in like, I wanted to get to work, but I also was very aware of like all of the life changes that I would have to make like around that big transition, because I was pretty comfy in my little bubble at Mohawk, and I grew up in Dundas, so I had a quick drive to Mohawk, and thinking about moving and starting my whole life was kind of a big transition. So I was very excited, but also thinking about all parts of it, not just getting an internship.
And I remember lively how your class in particular was super loud. Everybody was
Yeah.
extremely loud and lively, a lot of energy. Was
Yes.
everything was having a good time, and it was a very fun class.
Yeah, we were definitely like very close. I think we were very energetic. I think we were very loud. I don't think there was a lot of like,
In a
uh,
good way.
yeah, but there, I mean, we weren't very like awkward. I feel like we all just kind of got along, and we're very supportive of one another. And we were a very diverse group with all different types of skill sets. And I definitely was one of the loud ones. So sorry about that. But
No, not. I like loud. When loud combined with creativity and you begin to feel the energy, one of the best traits you have to go well in an industry, and it's proven today as I speaking with you. Uh, I remember you got your work directly at McLaren McCann. It was McLaren McCann at the time. Was
yeah,
McLaren McCann? Yes.
yeah.
How was that interview transition to get into the workforce there?
When I started, I really didn't know where I wanted to have my internship. So I kind of was going off of what we heard about in class or what other profs were telling us about, or just our own research. So I wanted to interview at like all of the big agencies. I also interviewed at a few agencies in Hamilton. Um, and I actually got interviewed by Julie Petrowski. And
Yeah.
she was at Mohawk. She came and saw my book, and even more than I was excited to work at McLaren, I was excited to work for her. I was like,
How
I really
how
just,
come?
I loved her feedback. I loved her questions. I loved how curious she was about me and my thinking. And I didn't
Hmm,
get that from every interview. I went to some interviews that were very um, focused on like technical art direction skills.
I see.
They were very focused on how well I knew software.
Well,
And I didn't feel that from Julie. I felt like she really cared about how I thought about creative and what I could offer. And I think that was kind of what made me realize that that was a great place for me to start my career.
Okay, that's great to hear. So I think when you develop that kind of empathy and say, I can work with this person, I want to work with this specific person, I think it's is more important. I agree with you. When you feel the energy and the vibe. And how was that experience? I will talk directly to you. How was the experience on the ad agencies itself? Because I seen here you'll be in a few during your career.
Yeah.
Like in Totten and McLaren McCann. So tell me about the experience that you had with all those clients like Royal Bank, Microsoft, Xbox, uh, Canadian Tire, all the big clients. How was that experience for you?
Well, I loved working at McLaren. When I started, the department that I was in, I think was called MMDI. So we were calling it like direct and interactive. So like direct mail and interactive was still like a thing where people were doing flash banners and things like that. It wasn't like a big part of the agency.
Those times.
Yeah, way back then. So it was actually one of the creative directors there when I was working on direct mail. And he came up to me and he was like, you know, with a name like Meg Button, I think you should be working in interactive. And I thought he kind of made a joke, but I took it seriously and I transferred over to the interactive department and started working on digital. And I think that one of the things that I learned a lot about working there was that there's a lot going on and you kind of have to just insert yourself into different things when you're at a big agency. You're not really like everyone's top priority. And I think I kept the enthusiasm that I had in college in my internship. And a lot of the people that I worked with when I was an intern knew how enthusiastic I was, knew how much I wanted to learn. And I had a lot of opportunities there because I would go up to people, ask what they're working on, ask if I could jump in. One of the ways I started working on a project for General Motors was I went up to a creative director and asked what he was working on. He was working on the history of GMC website. And I told him to, you know, give me a job and teach me how to do something. And that was very much like my time there was I felt like very supported. I felt like people let me kind of jump around and try a lot of different things. And but also really taught me a lot of valuable skills. So I definitely became a better designer and art director because of the people I worked with.
That's great. I'll open the mic to Christina. To what do you want to ask about her time on agencies at this, and any recommendations, Christina?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you're talking about the interactive part of McLaren, because I think that's the part that kind of turned into Momentum, which is what like McCann and Momentum is today, because I'm currently working on a GM project, actually.
Yeah, if you work at McLaren, you're going to touch GM at some point.
Yeah. So, how did you find, though, then you were in interactive, and then I know that you ended opening your own agency, right? Like you went through different agencies, but then you ended up being kind of like your own boss.
Yeah.
So and I read your bio as well, and I saw from a young age you were often starting your own business. So like, was that just something ingrained in you that you always wanted to do, or did that just kind of like evolve and happen on its own?
I think it was kind of always there. I found that when I was an art director, had a very hard time like staying in my own lane. Like I was asking a lot of questions. I wanted to know about how people were doing copywriting. I wanted to know how everything worked. I wanted to know the in-store experience. I just always wanted to know. I wanted to know how things worked, if it performed well. And I had a hard time just kind of doing whatever the task was that I was supposed to do. And at the time, I think that I was interested in like the customer experience. I always wanted to follow what people had people's attention and what people were interested in. And I mainly kind of transitioned into content marketing because probably around 2009, I just kind of had that moment where I really didn't want to create content that was interrupting people or intrusive. I wanted to create the content that they wanted to read, watch, and listen. So I got really interested in content and building communities. So that led me to working at Redwood, which at the time their tagline was, I think, branded content thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. And I started working there, and I got to work on the Home Depot account, which was one of the best experiences for me in terms of learning about brand guidelines and standards and what it means to uphold like a brand that has so much meaning and so many different touch points and so many things to think about that I became completely obsessed with everything to do with the brand. I was thinking about it nonstop. I would like come to the office and be thinking of stuff and call up my clients and pitch them ideas all the time. I was just a mess. I loved it. And then I think that was kind of the thing that made me realize how much I love talking to clients. I loved presenting work. I loved hearing about what they were trying to do or what insights they had about their customers. And I always kind of thought that was an account person's job, but I do think it's a creative's job as well. And then after working there, I went to Star Media Group and helped launch their content studio. And I got to learn a little bit more about operations and how a business is actually run and how to generate revenue and how to put together full content programs. And I did for a long time think about starting my own agency, and I would always kind of call up my mentors and say, like, do you think I'm ready? Like, is now the right time? And they'd say, like, hold off, Meg, like, get a bit more experience, like learn a bit more, like see what you can do. And then, I think when it was time, I was like ready to kind of just spread my wings and do my own thing. So
yeah, because I remember, and I'm sorry to give a on my point here is I remember I saw Meg during the ADCC AI event at the One Method agency, and it was a great session, by the way. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But I remember you telling something with your husband about that somebody at McCann said, I think Megan needs to create her own stuff. I see the leadership in her and everything. And I think that's part of the energy we're just talking. And you just told us about mentorship. How was that feeling? You just naturally feel like, I think this is too limited for me. I think I need to do more because I see you're doing events. There's different causes that you embrace, and you get a particular set of skills on the Nuscreen that your company that you do that is very multidisciplinary in a way that I see it's kind of a unique view on when it comes to the mix on uh, strategy on digital and e-commerce and AI and everything that is new and is specific that can really change the path of a company. I think you guys do, and I think this is amazing. So if you could describe a little bit that process and how was that feeling, will be great.
yeah, I think one of the first things that happened was my partner and I, we started doing a lot of different pitches, and we were pitching for new business with other people kind of like independently or like as freelance. And I was handling, the front end of the project. I was doing like strategy and design, and he was doing development, and the projects just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we were actually pitching for a really large account. And I signed in for the pitch, and it was me and my partner and then two other people. And there was all the big agencies were there pitching for the same project. And it was, a multi-million-dollar account, and there was a lot of moving pieces to it. And we didn't even have an agency at that point, and we went in and did our pitch, and I was talking a lot about the future of automotive and how I think dealership should be set up and things like that. And it was that night that one of the executives emailed me and said, you really have to think about the fact that, like, they will feel more comfortable giving you this account if you have an agency. Like, you need to think of a name and a logo and get yourself a business card, because these people really want to work with you, and they're not comfortable shaking hands and giving this account to some girl named Meg Button who's like, doing her work out of an apartment somewhere. So it just started to make me think that maybe it was time, and if other people were kind of recognizing that, I was ready to take the steps and actually think about it a little bit more seriously. So that was kind of a turning point for me, and then solidifying some really big accounts were giving me the confidence that I could go out and get business, because I wasn't somebody who worked in sales. I wasn't like, that wasn't my background, and learning that I could do that and having the confidence to do that was definitely like an important part of it, because it's a huge part of running an agency is being able to get clients.
And at that point, was it just you and your husband doing this?
No, I actually brought in some other people before, like people that I'd worked with in the past, and we were getting requests to do pitches for projects. So I was pretty lucky, like right out of the gate, that there were people that wanted to work with us, and it was primarily in the sense of they were bigger brands, but they really wanted to do things to push forward in digital. So they wanted things that were, either prototyping things for the future. They wanted to know about the future of user experience, digital experiences. We were doing audits on their mobile apps. We were looking at AR and VR and, just the future of technology and how it would impact brands. And that's a very hard space for big companies to play in, because just the nature of having so many people in the company, it just moves slower. And we were able to move fast and try things out and experiment while working with brands that wanted to kind of push forward in the digital space.
I would say that during the pandemic, uh, Megan was, I was really always surprised in a good way that Megan is an early adopter of everything. So everything that comes new, Meg is there. So one specific example was during the pandemic, the Clubhouse
Yeah,
app, and the only person on my network from Mohawk and everything who was there was Meg, and she
true.
was doing like she came in, tons of followers, already had rooms, super successful rooms, and everything else. I was like, wow, she knows how to do this kind of stuff. So tell me about this experience in the pandemic Clubhouse.
Um, yeah, I think that is kind of just like how I approach anything, where if I see something that's interesting and new, I'm definitely not afraid to like jump in and experiment and try something. And Clubhouse was something that during the pandemic my partner told me about, and at first I didn't really get it, and I wasn't somebody who just like got onto it and thought it was really cool, but I was really interested in like the concept of social audio. I love podcasts. I love audiobooks. I love audio as a medium. And I've always loved social. So I love the idea that, there was this kind of like hybrid and intersection of the two of them. Um, and then when I just saw the benefit of like having real-time connections with people, that's the kind of the part that pulled me in, because I saw there's a real difference between watching something or listening to something passively or being involved in it in real time and feeling connected to other people. And that was the thing that I saw that they did. And I started to kind of think about it in a different way. So a group of us got together and we ended up forming a company called Audiotorium. And everybody's from all over the world. So we have one person that's in New Zealand. We have people that are in LA. We have people all over. And we would get together and do productions. We had the longest running room on Clubhouse, which was like a meditation room. We did a lot of like table reads and different like productions for people to come to. And then we ended up getting a business deal with Reddit. And we actually helped them to test out their Reddit Talk platform. And we did some, we did a show with them. We got some audience feedback and started to kind of help them figure out what that might look like for them. So it was kind of fun to just experiment and see how things happened. And then, as they've changed the platform, we've been experimenting with just like other kind of like audio production. What's the next wave, or what's the new thing that's going to happen in audio?
Yeah, that's great to hear that. Every time you take the risk to try something new and really got in that specific new thing, opportunities start to pop up. And to have that kind of a risk taking personality, I think it's a wonderful skill to have. Like really, it pays off. Always pays off, I think. Uh, what can you tell me about something that you also do in conjunction? Well, you do lots of things, but one of the things you do in conjunction with your with Screen, it is the Next Canada. Can you tell us about Next Canada?
Sure. So, Next Canada is a startup accelerator program. So, we initially got brought on as a creative partner, um, and the idea was kind of to take the program, and they were starting to dissect it into different groups. So, there was Next 36 that was taking kind of early stage founders. Then there was Next AI that we also helped launch. And part of what we did as a partner agency was we helped build their website, we helped build their marketing platforms, and then we also did things with the entrepreneurs. So we would do live streams at the studio, have entrepreneurs come in and talk about their experience. And then from that relationship, I was asked to come on as an advisor. So I became a startup advisor for the program, specifically around like UX design and marketing. So startups could come to me if they had initial round of funding and they needed advice on design or marketing and things like that. And I could kind of help steer them based on my experience. And in 2018, we helped Next Canada kind of launch their AI program. So one of the things that we did was build out a program called Canada AI. And the whole premise of it was to put a spotlight on the impacts that Canadians have had in artificial intelligence. Talk about the history, talk about the things that have happened here and the advancements that have been made in Canada, and get people involved in events and highlight startups that we're hiring and have a bit of a community feel. And certainly, I mean, the activity that is in the space now is not what it was 5 years ago. So, yeah, I think that was a really great initiative that we got to, we did the branding, we built the platform, we did the launch of it. And it's been really great for us to just see how the startup ecosystem has changed, how the different types of entrepreneurs are kind of, excelling in Canada. And it's something that's always been really important to us and something that we've been really happy to be a part of.
That's incredible.
Christian,
How do you do it? You wear so many hats. How do you stay on top of all the trends, and how do you kind of stay ahead of everything? Because it seems like you're constantly, one step ahead of everybody else. How do you have time to stay on top of all that?
I don't really even think about it. I was like, I have to stay up to date on things. For me, it's a genuine curiosity. Like I've always been really curious about how things work, or how people are interested in things, or where their attention is, or consumer behavior. Why does one thing stick and something else doesn't? And if it's something that I'm naturally interested in and curious about and want to know more about, I'm one of the really lucky ones that, like, how I spend my free time is how I like to spend my paid time. Like it's something that I'm really lucky that I like to do what I do professionally. Personally, it's all very interesting to me, and it's how I like to spend my time. So it's not like I have a checklist of things I have to do to stay up to date. It's more of like I just try to keep a very curious mindset, and I like to think that I'm always learning and that there's always more for me to learn. And that's what makes me excited about the work that we do, is that I don't think I'll ever reach expert status on anything. I think that I'm always going to be a bit of a student and a learner, and there's always something kind of new around the corner to be interested in and look into.
how do you explain to a student the importance of, for example, have a partnership with Spotify and have great vendors or a whole network of people who will help you execute the ideas that you envision? How can you say to students in advertising programs or creative programs or marketing or graphic design how important it is this part?
Um, for me, it's been really important because I'm very much like in the collaborative mindset. I was that way when I was a student. I was never somebody who thought I could do everything on my own. I liked group projects. I've always think that people are smarter when they collaborate and combine their thinking. And that's something that I've always just carried through. So I've even worked with other agencies. I've partnered with other agencies. Working with Shopify was something that came early because one of our colleagues who ran another agency got acquired by Shopify, and we were really interested in it. And from my perspective, I'd been building e-commerce sites for a very long time, and I knew how expensive they were, and I knew how time consuming it was. And to see a platform like that, like I knew right away, I didn't need anyone to pitch me on it. I knew it was going to change the game, and forming that partnership and getting an expertise in that was super important, because they also need people like that to help their ecosystem grow. So I think a lot of the time, we try to think of ourselves as, we have to figure it out all on our own, or we have to know everything, or, you're on your own on this path. But if you know that there's other people out there that want to help you, and there's other partnerships that you can form, I think there's a lot of good things that can come out of it. And it allows you to move a lot faster if you can kind of use everybody for what they're good at and play into everybody's strengths.
Christina, go ahead with the next question.
Yeah. What do you think the future holds for advertising? I know that's a loaded question, but
I think, I mean, to me, like, it depends on how you define advertising. I think there's always a role for advertising. The thing that I think is going to impact the future is so much is how consumers are consuming it. I think now we're up against so many challenges that even when I was graduating, like, we didn't have that. There weren't like all these ad blockers. People still watch TV. People, like, there were so many points of exposure. Print was still a thing. There was still, newspaper ads, print ads. Like, there was all these things that were a lot of different vehicles for people to consume advertising. And now I think that the challenge is that people are actively trying to not see advertising. And something that has always been really important to me is realizing, like, why somebody chooses to not see an ad, or why they put skip. And to me, that's all about context and relevance. And if we're serving up advertising to people that it doesn't have any context to them and isn't relevant to them, it's not good. But if you do serve up something to somebody that has context around what they want and is relevant to something they're looking for, you're actually helping them. And I think as advertisers, we have to get better at, respecting the people on the other end of the ad, figuring out where they're at, how you can actually help them and help them make more informed decisions, and, maybe give them a laugh or maybe entertain them along the way. But I think that it's more challenging now to not just get in front of people, but how to actually, like, lock them in and get their attention and have them respond to it, and, have them actually care about your brand in a meaningful way, that they would actually share it with somebody that they care about, or, share it on their own profiles. And to me, that's where I see the future is, kind of going away from the idea that we're yelling and shouting at people, and more in the way that we're listening to consumers and being thoughtful about the ads that we put in front of them and how they're perceived and how they shape culture. Because I do think ads have a huge impact. And I think advertisers and creatives, we have to be very thoughtful about what we put out into the world and how they're received from people on the other end. And I think technology is going to help us do that. So to me, I think it's a good thing, because these things are all things that I've wanted to see. And I think that it's a great time to get into this space, because there's a lot of challenges that need to be solved and a lot of creative things that need to be figured out.
I see you.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting the link on this conversation. I saw a link on one of your posts that is say it's better to build relationships with the brand than a funnel.
Yeah.
With the sales. Can you explain that concept more to our listeners?
Sure. I think that was something that when I was kind of going through a phase of not really understanding my role as a creative working in advertising. I was kind of conflicted around that. And I wasn't sure that I really thought that brands had a role in people's lives. I didn't think that they really had a meaningful connection. And what I ended up realizing out of that is that they do. It's just how you insert yourself matters and how you connect to a person matters. And I think that, the way of screaming at someone or interrupting them, or I think that's why people don't like TV commercials, is because you're watching the hockey game and all of a sudden there's a diaper ad in the middle of the game. Like, you don't want that. But if you're searching for the best diaper on the market and you get some really important content that comes up in a community of people telling you about their experience with it, that's a whole different game. And to me, having that respect for people and knowing that you're not just trying to drag them down a sales funnel and get them to buy something, but you're actually trying to build a relationship where you, as a brand, you understand who your audience is and what they care about and how you can foster a relationship with them. And as the consumer, you realize that the role a brand plays in your life. I think people care about what a brand stands for, what their values are, how things are made. And to me, that relationship is very different. It's so different than, how advertising has been done in the past. The future has a lot more layers to it. And to me, that's an exciting thing, because I think when you have that kind of relationship, it comes with loyalty, and all anybody's trying to do is create, lifetime value and loyalty. And I think those things are very much connected.
So in a way, it's much more complex the way you get to the end of the funnel.
Yeah.
Of the loyalty.
Yeah. And
you forget the rest of the funnel and you just get the loyalty, and there's a whole different thing coming in. I think it's great to think that way, because it takes out the tangible, mechanical way of thinking how to approach in a more human way. And it seems easier, but it's much harder.
And I think that's also like something I learned about like art direction and design along the way, is that when I would get briefs and I would get these things that were very prescribed and people would say this is how it had to be, how people perceive design is most of the time very emotional. It's how we're making somebody feel. It's the emotions that they're getting when they're seeing it. And that is something that's very hard to kind of be overly analytical about and saying, well, this is the formula to create a great ad. A lot of it has to do with the person on the other end and the basically like the vibe you're putting across to them and how you're making them feel. And I think that can be the challenge as somebody working in design and art direction, is that there's a lot of stuff that you have to think about that goes beyond the brief and the specs that you're given and the parameters that you have. You have to care a lot about kind of the overall emotion that you're trying to bring out of whatever you're trying to create.
I love that. It must be hard though, right? Because sometimes, you're given that brief, you're given those parameters, and you're going, I can see there's so much more than what I've just been given, and you try to give more than that. And I'm sure it's been met with pushback, right? People are like, no, let's stick to this. Like, how do you navigate that pushback?
I think, especially when you're starting out, if you're an intern or a junior, something that I'm, I'll say as advice, but I didn't follow myself, is like, there's a point where I think you can articulate your point, say what you think, and then there's a point where you definitely know if you're not going to win the argument. I was probably like a bit more stubborn and loud than I should have been in a lot of meetings for where I was at, but I do think that, there were times where I got a brief and I did exactly that, and I was in a boardroom and I would explain what my idea was, and I would say, I know this is what you're asking for, but I think we should do this, and I would describe it. I would push, and I'd get pushback, and then I'd push again and say, no, I disagree, and there would be this back and forth, and then maybe I ended up losing. But a couple weeks, months down the road, that person leading the project would call me up and say, we want you on this project because of how you thought about something or how you problem solve. it's always, always valuable to share your thinking and share your perspective and talk about your creative decisions and talk about your rationale. And even as a junior, a lot of the time you might think, oh, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. This, I should just, keep my mouth shut and let the creative director or whoever present. And what I actually learned is that, yeah, they might not take everything that you say and go, okay, sure, we're going to start making all these revisions. But they remember what you said, and they remember how you thought, and they remember that you cared so much and that you were creative and you could problem solve. And I ended up getting invited to so many brainstorms because I was never afraid to throw out a bad idea. I was never afraid to just spitball, come up with ideas. I would do mock-ups on the spot. I'd be whiteboarding. And I had no fear of looking bad in a creative meeting. Like, I just didn't think it was possible. And a lot of juniors and interns were too afraid to speak. And I think you have to kind of be humble about it. You can't think that you know everything, and you can't think that you've got the best ideas. But there's a lot of value to being somebody with a fresh perspective, somebody who cares a lot, who's passionate. And I think, those are things where push back as much as you can, share your thinking. If your idea gets knocked down, at least you've got to tell everybody what you think. And, now I would say even just go write about something, or go write a blog post, or go make a TikTok about it. Like, share your thoughts, because they do matter, and not everything's going to get picked up and move forward, but it still matters, and it makes you better at your job.
Yeah, I think the development of that thick skin is the most difficult part of of the college years.
Yeah, I think it's like something that you think that you're ready for, and if you care a lot about what you do, the first couple of times that you get knocked down is very hard. And like, I know a lot of people that just got out of the industry because they couldn't take it. It was too much. It was too emotional to like constantly be told that your idea wasn't good, or you work on something and the campaign gets killed, or there's all sorts of things that can happen. And I think like learning what your role is in this, and not thinking of anything as a waste, is something that, looking back, I can learn from things. But at the time, it is really hard to just kind of learn that, because you don't have to experience that in school. You don't know what it's like to work on something for 3 months and then have a client just throw the whole thing in the garbage. That's something you have to learn and go through. And yeah, definitely there's a lot of people that can't take that.
I think sometimes I feel like the big agencies freak out a little bit with some more medium-sized and small agencies, like CDLE or you guys. They see that system that works, that they have no clue how the pieces come out together. And like City Lead do interior design and event management activations mixed with product design and all those internal collective things that they have inside. And you also do events, all this online thing and early adopting. Can you tell me about this fact? I love that you said that as much as there is no too many pieces to move, we can move faster. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
How to know how fast you can grow to maintain that control, because
Yeah, I think one of the like ways that I really learned about that was we were pitching against a big agency, and we had gone for this client, and at first we were in the top 10, then we were in the top 5, and we kept pitching and pitching, and then we were down to the final 2, and the other agency was like a huge agency, lots of money. And one of my friends worked at the agency, and they said, just so you know, we're flying in executives from all over for this pitch. We have a catered lunch. We have this big boardroom. They're going to be doing this like, exercise on the wall. Like, all the executives are doing this big talk. And I'm like, okay, well, we've got our small little office, but we have to think about how can we compete in this game, because it's not on being able to drop thousands of dollars for one pitch day. So our team got together and we pulled in a couple of people that we knew that were really creative. And we were like, this has to be the best pitch we've ever done in our life. So we redesigned the office. We changed all of our artwork. We made ads for the prospective client. We put ads up we changed all the frames in our office. We made ads for them. We had, when you walked in the office, we had a 3D projection of the brand. When you walked down into our boardroom, we pretended like we were going to put up a PowerPoint slide, and we actually did a video projection of each person on the team, like all around the room, and did like a full immersive kind of showcase of the work we would do, a teaser video. And we almost did the exact opposite of everything that we knew that the big agency would do, and use that to our advantage. And we almost took the structure of a stereotypical pitch presentation and kind of turned it on its head. And we were super creative. We were, giving them kind of prototypes and things. And we turned it around in, I think, 2 or 3 days, where the other agency I know had I think like a 75-page PowerPoint presentation that they did. And it was kind of one of those things where it really showed what we were able to do that a big agency couldn't. And so the client left and walked down the street, and about a half hour later, they called me up and said that we got the business. So our whole team ran downstairs and met the client and went out with them to celebrate. And for me, that was a real good moment to realize that, being small sometimes when it comes to, having big budgets or having big teams to work on things, or even having a new biz team. Like, nobody on my team was dedicated to new business, but they all wanted to jump in because it was something creative. It was something exciting. And the mentality of our team was like, even if we don't get this was so much fun to work on. And we got to stretch so many different types of muscles with this, and we had fun pitching. And we ended up just kind of being able to reflect on that. And our strengths were our creativity, our speed, our passion for experimenting. And I think those are the types of things that I think are benefits to being at a smaller place versus like a big agency.
Thank you. Well, that's very inspiring to listen to, Meg. Really, really, really a different approach. And I'm always mesmerized to do those talks, because you can hear the details that you're just imagine on hearing things. We're reaching the 15-minute mark to land, and I will ask the 3 questions that ends this with the help of Christina, of course. And I want you to know, now that we hear everything from you, and probably we interview thousands of different junior creatives or prospective interns during your career, or junior professionals, what are the biggest mistakes you see on the presentation itself and on the work? And what would be your recommendations for somebody at school?
Specifically for creative people?
For creative students that have advertising in the creative field, and now they're also learning strategy and everything. But I just want to hear from you your recommendations and what you see that you say, oh my God, I always see this kind of stuff, and I want people to know.
Yeah, I would say for sure, like with presentation skills, it's going to be a bit awkward and it's a bit rocky, but some of the biggest mistakes that I see are like reading off of the page, or like literally like walking through a layout line by line, or like reading copy off of a mock-up, or things that we already know. So to me, that's a really boring way to start a presentation, because my brain's turned off because I've already read the copy on the page, and now you're reading it to me, and now I'm completely checked out. So I think coming in with something really, really strong, if you're showing your work, like, find a hook, find something to get me excited right off the bat. Like, why did you pick this project? Like, what's exciting about this? What's different about it? I think there needs to be a level of like confidence, where I see a lot of juniors kind of almost like apologize for the work, where, oh, I was going to do this, but like I didn't have, I would have done this. And they're kind of like making excuses for it, where I would say, like, put your best foot forward, like present with confidence. And then later, if you want to sidebar about what you would have done differently, I think that's fine. But I think you can kind of go in and talk about your thinking and talk about what you've done without kind of explaining things to people that they already know, or making like excuses, or saying that you rushed something, or if you find a typo or something on your work, like just don't call it out. And it seems like the right thing to do at the time, but a lot of what I'm trying to see is, how you position something, how you present something, what your thinking was, what your thought process was. And then I also want to know that you have some skills. So I want to know how much of it you designed, how much of it, what your role in it was. If you worked with other people, say you worked with other people, like don't act like you designed something all on your own if you worked with a team. So those are the things that I would say that would kind of help make the presentation side a little bit stronger.
Christina, your turn. You're muted.
I know for myself and a lot of my classmates, we always wonder, how on earth do you manage a work-life balance working in the industry? Because we hear about these long hours and, you're working weekends and whatnot. And I know you said you love what you do and you do it outside of work, but what would you say?
I'm absolutely the wrong person to ask this question to. I was thinking about this the other day, and I've had people kind of ask me this, but I'm not the person to follow. I did not have any work-life balance. When I first started, I worked so late all the time. I missed my train once going back to Hamilton, and I slept in Union Station when I was working on a pitch. I worked all the time, and I loved it. And I made friends with people that worked at the agency, and even when I wasn't working, I started doing freelance photography. I was doing freelance video. I don't think I'm a good person to answer that. I ended up marrying somebody that I work with and have a business with now. So I think that if you're worried about that, I think the one thing that I can tell you is that no company is going to set up those parameters and boundaries for you. If there's things that are important to you, or things that you want to have your own balance, those are things that you have to create yourself. Because if you don't have any boundaries and you don't have any limitations, a lot of companies will just try to get you to work all the time and do everything. And if you love it, especially if you're a creative, I think it can be all consuming. But I think especially now, I think companies are a lot more aware of mental health and giving people time off, and those weren't even conversations that I had when I first started working. But I would say that it's up to you. I would say figure out what you need, figure out what matters to you with your schedule, and block that time off. So if there's things that you need to do, or time that you need to have away from work, take it seriously, and set those things up for yourself. Schedule a time in your calendar. If you need to go for a walk, or you need to go to the art gallery, or you need whatever, even to go get groceries, whatever it is you need to do, I think learn how to manage your time properly, and take it seriously, and know that it has to come from yourself, because that's not a company's responsibility to do that for you. And I think a lot of people almost burn themselves out, and then and then they'll end up changing a job or a career. And I would say, if you love what you do, figure out how to make it work with your life, and, figure out what schedule works for you, because that looks different for everyone.
Yeah. If you have the opportunity, Meg, to start an advertising program, how this program will be, how it will prepare the kids for the industry, in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. I think that, so what I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So one of the things that I think would really help for an advertising program is actually get the students to put their work out into the world. So if you design something, give that design to people who are waiting in line at a coffee shop or people who are, out in the world, because that's really what your designs are competing with. If you're putting your design up on a clean, empty wall and critiquing them that way, you don't really have a true context of how advertising fits in people's life. And I think if I was to design a program, I would focus on truly how advertising is competing with so many different things. It's not competing with other ads. It's competing with everything that has a person's attention. And especially with mobile ads, I think a lot of advertising programs are focused on, big concepts and things that can take up space and can be well thought out. But a lot of the things that people are dealing with now are like micro interactions, and they're social, and they're on your phone, and they're small, and they're loud and noisy. And when you put those things out in the world, a lot of ideas that I see can't really stand up against all that. So I think it'd be fun to have something where your concepts and your ideas are actually kind of like catapulted into the real world, and see if they're sticky and see if they're good, instead of just seeing if people think it looks nice or not. I would love to see if it's something that grabs people's attention and is well received and can get attention up against other things that are happening in people's lives.
That's food for thought, for sure, for the future of the program. We're going to program review this year, so probably very good advice, Meg, for us. On the last question now, I will have a last question for me, and then to finish it up with Christina.
Sure.
What is your best memories from Mohawk?
Well, I've got a lot of good memories from Mohawk.
I think was the F wing. You guys still have the IMAX that was the drop.
Yeah.
The drop. Okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of my best memories was like my first day in art direction class. Everybody was already like designing layouts, and I didn't know how to turn on a Mac. So I was sitting there trying to figure out how to turn the computer on. And that was a very humbling moment for me. And after that, I was so upset about it that I just was working at a part-time job and saved up money until I could buy my own Mac, because I'm like, I'm going to learn this thing inside out. I loved working at the agency, the student agency, MCA. I thought that was like a great experience, something that was a lot of fun.
At the time, was that small room?
It was like a little hallway, small room, and we painted it.
At the time, yes.
Yeah, we painted it and we made it happen, and I thought that was a great experience. We worked on a project for the Robert Land Community Center. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
So we designed a logo. We did a whole branding initiative, and we ended up launching this great program, and we threw this event for all the kids in the community around Halloween. So we did like a volunteer event, and I thought that was a cool project, because it started out as doing kind of like a logo and marketing and branding, and then we all were like rolling up our sleeves. We went down to the community center. We're painting walls. We're like setting it up, and it was really cool to see something that kind of came in as a brief, where it was like, there's this community center, they need to get money, there's all these things. And I think we kind of all just, took it on as our own. We ended up getting written about in the paper and things like that, which I thought was neat. And yeah, it was I think that was one of my best memories. I loved working on that.
Christina?
All right. So my big question is...
Don't ask me about work-life balance again.
No, I won't. I promise. No more.
I stumbled across that one.
I have to ask only because you had mentioned so many things about,
Yeah.
It's like I live my work. So I was like, I have to ask. There has to be something. She must like hiking or camping or something. But no. So my big thing, because I have been in work environments that are not so great. How do you ensure, or how do you foster a positive and collaborative work environment for your teams? Because that is so important, especially in creative.
Um, do you mean part of it, or like how do I do it?
How do you do it? What do you do to make sure to ensure that, it's a positive environment for everybody?
I think I try to lead by example. I think it's a lot of the things that I talked about is I I try to let people explore and think through things, and I am the queen of throwing out a half-baked idea. I love the idea that you can throw something that's not fully done and let someone else finish it. I think for me, a lot of what I've tried to do is let people know that like what we're doing is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting. Give space to other people's voices. Like, I think teaching people that it's okay to like toss to one of your coworkers, ask them what they think, give space to people. And if they're don't have the courage to speak up, or they're not comfortable yet, like work with them and see what they're really thinking, because there's a lot of introverted people that don't get the chance to speak up, or they get talked over. And that's something that I think a lot about is I try to look at each person and think about what's making them speak up, what's giving them the confidence. And if they're not sharing and they're not collaborating and they don't have that, what can I do to make them feel more comfortable to share their ideas, and let them know that not everything has to be perfect. You don't have to find the right way to say something. It's okay if it's not fully done. And it doesn't matter, how experienced you are, what your job title is or whatever. Like, everybody's ideas and thoughts are valid. And I try to be that and show people that, I take my job seriously. I don't take myself seriously. So have fun and throw things around, and remember that we are really lucky to be able to do this for a living. So we should all kind of just keep that in mind and lift each other up and elevate each other. And I'm a theater kid, so I usually live and die by the improv, do a yes and in a brainstorm. Yep. So, brainstorms aren't and collaborations aren't for knocking down other people's ideas. We're here to yes and it. So how are you going to take someone else's idea and build on it and grow on it? And I'm still learning how to be better at all of these things, but there are things that that are always kind of going on in the back of my head, and I try to live by those things and put them into my work and kind of pass those things on to my teammates.
I'm very familiar with the yes and. I'm also a theater and improv kid. So
improv will help you out a lot. It's a skill to have. I've been in presentations and stuff where everything just goes wrong. The tech doesn't work. We had one where, everything just went down, and I just improv the whole thing. And I think it's a great skill to have, because it'll get you through a lot of situations.
That's great. Well, another food for thought for our program review. And we're planning for years now to get a super 2 classes on just presentation itself, just focus on that. So I think we're going to make it happen. Meg and Christina, thank you so much for this conversation. My mind is going like this, turning around with so much information, and I'm very inspired and very glad to have you here, Meg, after all those years. And it was a pleasure to bounce into you and your partner at the event there on AI. And I hope we can see each other on the events, and please keep in touch. Christina,
yeah, absolutely.
I'll probably see you tomorrow in class.
Oh yeah, you'll see me tomorrow in class.
Well, all right.
And so, Christina, if you ever need anything, reach out to me anytime.
How people can reach you?
Well, you can reach out to me anytime if you ever need anything, or when you get started if you have questions. But if there's any other students that want to connect with me, I am always available for a chat on LinkedIn. And if you want to get me to respond faster, just put that you're RAF student in the subject line, and I'll respond faster.
or go to the spam directly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the best way is that you on LinkedIn, send a message. Okay.
Yeah.
So Meg Button, look into LinkedIn. You'll be mesmerized by the knowledge she has, and any input. Portfolio, you do portfolio reviews.
Yep.
Things like that? Okay, amazing. Okay, so Meg, thank you so much for your time.
My
We're
pleasure.
looking forward to you. Uh, so that's it for this semester. For this is the last episode of the year. We'll come back in January for the next episode of season 4. And thank you so much. Have a nice holidays, everybody. Thank you once again, Meg. Thank you,
Thank you,
Christina.
Raf.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.